Hi, welcome to this first video in a series on depression called Depression Help. I hope that the content will be helpful to you, and if there's something in particular that you're struggling with, then perhaps leave a note in the comments of something that might be helpful to you to talk about. And if that's something that I have some sort of experience in, or have maybe developed some sort of technique for, or learned a technique from somewhere else for, then I'll be happy to share it with you. If we haven't met before, my name's Scott, and the first thing I want to talk about is what people think when you say the words mental illness. As soon as you say the words mental illness, people think crazy. And I don't really like the term crazy, and I think crazy is going to be a term that probably not too far down the line is one that you can't say anymore because it's possibly offensive to some people. But when people say crazy, I think what they mean is psychosis. So we've all heard the term psycho, and a lot of guys accuse girls of being psycho, most of the time probably because they don't understand that guys and girls think very differently, and because they can't logically reason a girl's behaviour, they think they're crazy. Sorry about the background noise, but I do live next to a busy street. So yeah, I think it's good to acknowledge to start with that as soon as you say mental illness, people think psychosis, and that isn't the case. A lot of doctors would say, and I would say as a layperson, that stress is a form of mental illness, chronic stress. And stress is something that we've all suffered from. Some people spend a lot of their time feeling very stressed, and that has a pretty devastating impact on your body as well as your mind. It's always really good to remember how closely linked the body and the mind are, and if something's wrong with one, it affects the other and vice versa. So I think that it's helpful just to have a kind of idea, and just to be very clear, I'm not in any way a mental health professional. I studied psychology as part of an access course to get into university, and that involved completing first year of a degree program of psychology. So that is the only qualification that I have. Other than that, I just have personal experience, having read all the good books I can find on depression, and previously having run a support group for people with depression and anxiety. So anything that I say is just really from the point of view of a layperson, and if you are struggling with your mental health, then the person that obviously you should consult is a mental health professional. So basically, what I learned in psychology was that, and this is really broad terms, but what I learned in psychology was that you have psychosis and neurosis, and it's not quite as straightforward as that, but just for some sort of understanding, or to share the understanding that I learned from doing that course in psychology. Neurosis is things like anxiety and depression, that kind of thing, and psychosis is things like schizophrenia, bipolar, things like that. So when you have, so basically what people call crazy is probably what they mean when they're thinking of psychosis, but obviously we shouldn't call people who suffer from psychosis crazy, because that's a form of mental illness, and it's not their fault that they suffer that. So I think it's really good to lose the label crazy and not to use it. But the thing is that I think as soon as you say mental illness or mentally ill or whatever, people automatically think psychosis, and that's crazy. That's not good, because it's not accurate at all. The vast majority of people who suffer from mental illness suffer from forms of neurosis. So anxiety, depression, and as a lot of doctors would argue, stress. So it's not really an appropriate sort of image that's given, and I think that's part of the problem that we have in society. And I think that things have improved a lot, because after the pandemic, or during the pandemic, people that saw people who struggled with their mental health as different from them, people who'd never struggled with their mental health found themselves struggling with their mental health, and they realized that that's something that can happen to anyone. And again, something that I learned in that course that I did on psychology was that rather than putting people in boxes, it was more helpful to see people as being on a scale, and anyone can kind of move up and down the scale. So you've got wellness or illness kind of thing. So rather than seeing somebody who at some point in their life is struggling with their mental health as putting them in a box and they're different, seeing people as being on a scale and people being at different points on the scale. Now that said, obviously there are people who have lifelong mental illness. They have some people have a form of mental illness that other people won't suffer from. For example, schizophrenia, which, if I remember correctly, often presents sometime around when you're 25. But again, something I learned from that psychology course was that it can happen if somebody's in an extremely stressful situation. The lecturer, I actually remember giving the story about a family member who it happened to. He made a mistake at work, and it was a really, really big mistake with catastrophic results, and he then developed schizophrenia. So basically, I think if you're going to talk openly about struggling with your mental health or mental illness, which I chose to do, when was it? It was more than 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. Basically, one of the things that I do is DJ, and when I used to do it before, I had a break for about 6 or 7 years. And basically, when I used to do it before, one of the towns that I played in a lot, there were a couple of young guys within a short period of time who took their own lives. And it wasn't people that I knew well, it was just people that kind of I would know to say hi to or whatever, and saw at gigs and things. But I was very moved by that, and I felt that there's so much stigma about mental illness, and just like I'm talking about the fact that as soon as you say that, people think psychosis, and I think because of that, that's maybe one of the reasons that people are scared to talk about it, especially guys. And there's also this really, really stupid idea that talking about mental illness or struggling in your mental health is weak, which is absolute nonsense, because if you think of the toughest guys in the world, special forces, elite forces, a lot of them end up struggling with their mental health, PTSD. So the idea that talking about struggling with mental illness or struggling with your mental health is weak is absolute and utter nonsense. But unfortunately, there seems to be this macho thing that guys can't get upset, guys can't talk about their feelings, and personally I think that's total BS. I think there's a time and a place for it. I think if you're out on a date with somebody and you start unloading all your woes, then it's probably not going to go very well. It's probably a better place to talk to either a professional or a close friend. But I definitely think that it's absolute nonsense that guys can't talk about their feelings, case in point. So basically, I think that things have improved, but I think that they're still not great and there's still room for improvement. So I decided back then, 15 years ago or whatever it was, that I'd kept it a secret up until that point that I suffered from depression, and I decided to come out about it on Facebook. And for me at the time, that felt like a really risky thing to do, because I was a DJ, or I still am a DJ, but I was a DJ, and your reputation is kind of everything. And I thought, what, if I tell people that I struggle with depression, then will they stop coming to my gigs? Is it gonna affect my livelihood or whatever? But if you suffer from depression, you're probably a very good actor, like me, and a lot of people won't actually know that you're struggling. If you are somebody who suffers from depression, you can probably see it in others a lot more easily than most people can, and also other kind of forms of mental illness. But again, the only person qualified to diagnose mental illness is a mental health professional. So I think that that was actually a really liberating thing to do. It was a very scary thing to do, and that was 10, 15 years ago, when attitudes were worse than they are now. But actually not keeping it a secret anymore, I think that was very liberating. So for me personally, I think that being open about it, and you don't have to tell everyone, but at least being open about it with your friends, your family, if you can be more open about it with other people as well, then I think that there's a lot of value in that. And my motivation for doing it was that I wanted to be a tiny little part of breaking the stigma about it. And I just thought that if more people, especially guys, felt that they could talk openly about their health, their mental health, and if they were struggling, then the more and more people did it, the less stigma there would be. So just a really tiny part of that, but that was my motivation. And it ended up, as I say, benefiting me, because it was just kind of like a weight lifted off my shoulders, that as well as dealing with this illness, I didn't also have to keep it a secret. And obviously at gigs, if it felt like crap, I still, put on a big smile, and you're not coming to a gig to be depressed. So, but as I say, if you've got depression, you become a very good actor, and people, people won't know, or most people won't know unless you want them to, unless you're really, really bad, and then you don't have the energy to act. So that's really the main thing I wanted to say in this video, is that in my personal experience, just as a lay person, as a person like you, I found that it was really, really liberating just to be open and honest about it, and also to acknowledge that I don't think you should be scared to talk about it, because so what if some people think you're crazy? Every time I post something about mental illness, and I don't post a lot about it, but if every time you just know that some people are going to think, that guy's crazy for sharing that, or whatever, and I just accept that, it's just the way it is. I know my diagnosis, and I've never suffered from any form of psychosis, and I'm really fortunate for that. But if I did, it wouldn't be my fault, and for anyone that does suffer from actual psychosis, it's not their fault either, and we shouldn't judge people for illness. I mean, the thing is that attitudes towards mental illness are totally different to physical illness. I mean, you wouldn't think badly of somebody because they've got high blood pressure, or because they've got a heart problem, or because they suffer from some sort of skin condition, and that, that's obviously something that's going to be really difficult for people as well, if people can see it, if it changes their appearance, things like that. But there's such a massive difference between the way that we look at mental illness and the way that we look at illness in the body, and that's something that needs to change. And will that change significantly even in my lifetime? I don't know, but I think that we shouldn't be afraid. The reality is, if you've been stressed, if you're really stressed out, that's some doctors would argue that's a form of mental illness, and it's really bad for your physical health as well. We know that stress is really bad for your physical health, and so are depression and anxiety. I read something recently that if you suffer from depression and anxiety, then it increases your chances of having serious physical illnesses like cancer and things like that. So I think that being open about the fact that you have mental illness, even if it's only just with people who are close to you, then you don't need to keep it a secret. If people treat you differently, or don't want to be your friend or something like that, then they weren't friends in the first place. Somebody that truly cares about you, truly loves you, appreciates who you are as a person, they're not going to think any less of you because instead of having high blood pressure or something, you're struggling with some form of mental illness. So I think that's really just what I wanted to say in the first video. In the next one, I'm probably going to talk about I'll probably talk about a few things, but I'll talk about my own experience in terms of, like what I've suffered from, and then maybe we can get into talking about some techniques that are particularly helpful. Actually, in the next one, the first thing I'm going to talk about is how to know if you are depressed, then I'll maybe talk about basically, my own kind of track record kind of thing, and then you know where I'm coming from, and then we can maybe look at techniques that might be helpful. So I really hope that this video has been beneficial to you. If there's something that would be better or worse, or something that wasn't helpful or whatever, then let me know in the comments. I won't take anything personally. I'm spending a little bit of my time because I'd like to be a small part of helping other people who are struggling with this, and just continue to be a small part of abolishing the stigma about mental illness. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.